Let's talk about Arsenal, though, as well, John, because Henrik Mkhitaryan coming to the Emirates, is that going to work for Arsenal?
Well, he's a very Arsene Wenger style of player, isn't he? I mean, can you imagine the sort of the endless passing that will go on between him and Mesut Ozil before they actually finally take a shot? Look, I think that Mkhitaryan is just a really interesting player for Arsenal, simply because I think that when he went to Man United, he was a player that interested Arsene Wenger then, and they couldn't get him. He went to Old Trafford. I think he is a really good technical player. And there's a lot of negativity surrounding Mkhitaryan amongst Arsenal fans, and I don't quite get that. I think it's easy to see why, in a way, simply because obviously he's been seen as the sort of the make-weight in a deal that sees Alexis Sanchez, Arsenal's best player, leave the club. So you have to take that on board. But if you view Mkhitaryan as an individual, he's a really good footballer. And I think if Arsenal can end up having lost Sanchez, who's become a bit of a millstone around their neck this season. I'm sure they regret not doing that deal last August when they were offered 60 million in the closing days of the window by Man City. But if they can close this window and end up with Mkhitaryan and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, who's obviously the hot topic of conversation now as well, signing him from Dortmund, then I do think Arsenal potentially finish the window in a stronger position.
Well, let's just hear about Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, as you've mentioned, John, because he was a player that was discussed widely during this week's EuroLeague's football podcast.
I mean, there's something different going on here. Michael Zorc, the sporting director, said we had a conversation and I basically don't recognise the guy anymore, because I think in the past they put up with it because they felt, that's just who he is. He's a bit unreliable. He's not very punctual. He's got his head in the clouds. They have a meeting at 3. He turns up at 3:05. Okay, we'll give him a pass. That's who he is. But now I think at Dortmund it's seen as something a bit more sinister. A player really trying to almost get Dortmund to get rid of him. And the way things are going, I think they're soon out of options. I don't think they want to sell him now in January, but they are believing, reading between the lines, that he's only making such a spectacle of himself because there is perhaps now finally a club prepared to take him off their hands. They were very willing to listen to offers in the summer. We talked about this before. They turned down Manchester City's 70 million euros bid the summer before, 16. They didn't feel that was quite enough, or City didn't quite come close enough to meeting the valuation that they had. Now things have changed because it can't really go on like that anymore. And it's a shame because there's ways of handling things. Big players have left Dortmund before without falling out with the club, without falling out with their team members, but it seems to be going down that route.
Oh, well, that was Rafa Honigstein talking on 5 Live's EuroLeague's football podcast, which you can download now. John Bennett from the BBC's World Service joins us. Hi, John.
Hello there.
So, Aubameyang, Arsene Wenger wasn't going to be drawn to down whether he was going to try and sign him. You've interviewed the player a few times, haven't you? Dortmund not happy. What's the likelihood of this happening?
I think there's a strong likelihood. There's been another development. Let's talk about Arsene Wenger's press conference first of all, because as you'd expect, he was asked about Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, and you mentioned he wouldn't be drawn on it, but he did talk about his character. Someone asked him, would he be the type of player who would fit in at Arsenal? And Arsene Wenger gave a very general answer. But Borussia Dortmund didn't take too kindly to it at all. Their pre-match press conference today, they're playing tomorrow. Their press officer read a statement on behalf of their sporting director, Michael Zorc. He said, "We find it disrespectful to talk about a player from another club. There's been no contact with Arsenal, and we assume Arsene Wenger has enough to do worrying about the performances of his own players." And tonight, there's this new development. Dortmund are playing Hertha Berlin tomorrow. They flew to Berlin tonight, and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang was not on the plane. He's been left out of the squad because Michael Zorc, the sporting director, says he's not 100% focused. He says he'll train in Dortmund. At the moment, we have the impression he is busy with other things in his head and is therefore not fully focused. So the question arises whether he can help us in Berlin. So this is the second weekend running. He's been left out of the squad. He missed a team meeting last weekend, so was suspended. It really feels as though this is the end of his time at Borussia Dortmund. He was desperate to leave in the summer. I feel he's going to leave in January. Well,
that's interesting because you said, John Cross, just now that you felt that Mkhitaryan was a very Arsene Wenger kind of player. But to sign somebody like Aubameyang, who is maybe not focused, as John was just describing, What do you think? I mean, is he an Arsene Wenger kind of player?
Well, it surprised me, I've got to say, simply because he does come with that little bit of baggage and that little bit of trouble, and that sort of reputation. My understanding is that obviously, and also bearing in mind, Aubameyang is just about 29 years of age. I think he turns as his birthday next month. So again, that would sort of almost count against him. But my understanding is that Arsenal's new head of recruitment, Sven Mislintat, who of course was previously at Dortmund, obviously knows Mkhitaryan, by the way, as well, very well from their time at Dortmund, and had a big hand in discovering both players. Has certainly vouched for his character, and also, for him as a player on the pitch. I think he's a wonderful attacking talent, and I think that Wenger would. I think if he perhaps needed any convincing, then that's been done, and I do think he's someone that he'd like to sort of work with. It's an amazing situation as far as I'm concerned, because Arsenal's paid a record £52 million for Alexandre Lacazette in the summer. He's struggled, I think, in many ways, to adapt to the Premier League, and they are buying effectively the same player. And that's the biggest surprise for me in the Aubameyang scenario. And so that really has sort of got me a bit. Look, he's very quick, he's pacey, he moves the ball well, very, very quick from midfield to attack. He's an extremely exciting player. And for Arsenal fans, I think it's one to be excited about, simply because he would be more of a direct replacement, I think, for Sanchez. And, I do actually think, rather like Michael there, I do feel that it's a deal that will get done by the end of the window.
Very quickly, John,
If I was an Arsenal fan, I wouldn't be too worried about his character. I think, as Rafa mentioned, he has had indiscretions in the past, but it's not malicious. The interesting thing is, though, he's very good friends with Ousmane Dembele, who forced a move from Borussia Dortmund in the summer to Barcelona by basically going on strike. And he's not gone on strike, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, but this is getting close to that situation. He's trying to force his way out of the club, it seems.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, John.